welcome to part 2 of our UV workshop video. So in part 1, we laid out all the UVs in the UV editor. For part 2, we're going to show how to get this into the image editing software of your choosing. I will be using Photoshop. But for now, I do want to just briefly review what has to happen here. First of all, we would want to make sure, for example, that we don't see any red on here. So I click this button. Anything that's red when that button is live will mean that there's something overlapping, something is hidden, something is not getting shown up on here. So it's a way to tell, from this viewport what's missing in this viewport. The other button that we could press is this one right here, which shows the sort of assortment of whether things are too compressed or too um, spread out. Now, it's not going to be pure white like it was with the earlier project because there is more going on here. So you can see it's a little bit, let me think, cool is far away. So it's a little bit too far away over here, a little bit too close over here, but it's also very evenly done. And we can see that really this is fine, so the picture is going to be fine. This is fine, so the back of it's going to be fine. It's just going to be the frame. So we should really, we can look at this as an overall thing, but really what you want to do is check these numbers out in here. And it's sort of unavoidable because we do have these areas right here that there's certain places that are just a little bit too, what's the word for it, too compressed. Um, so we have to spread things out. And so it's telling us that these things are maybe a little bit too close together. I could potentially, go into UV mode and maybe spread things out a little bit more relative to each other. But that would only help, I think, a little bit. And the areas that are the hottest are the ones that I expected to be. This area right here, let's go to face mode. These faces right here, I absolutely expect those to be the ones that are the most closest together. um, that's just how that cookie crumbles. I knew that was going to happen. So I'm not super concerned about that. All right. But as long as I'm aware that that's happening, and it's kind of it's within the realm of what I want, um, then it's within the restrictions that I'm looking for. Tolerances, that's what I wanted. The other thing is that all 3 UV shells do have to be in this quadrant, and I've made them as big as possible within that quadrant without getting too cute about it. So they're close to the edge, but they're not like right on the edge. I don't want to mess around with losing a few pixels and then I got to redo work. All right, but to get this out of here, we go to Image, UV Snapshot, and because I set my project up at the beginning of this, it should be going to my images folder, image out. I'm going to call it homework just in case there's other files in there. We make sure it's a JPEG. That's a good file format to work with for us for now. If you were in high-end stuff, maybe you'd use like a TIFF or a Targa. But JPEG is more than enough for us for right now. Also, depending on what you are exporting, you may need a larger size here. So, I mean, it goes all the way up. Actually, it might go up. Let's see if it goes. Oh no, it doesn't go higher than that. Okay, so there is a ceiling on that. And the higher the numbers, the higher the resolution. We don't have to really go any bit higher than what the default is. But if you are working on a much larger item, like a physically larger item or something that you need more detail on, then you would go to a larger set of numbers. Everything else is where we want it, so we hit apply. And what that should have done is if I go to my folders, I go to images, there is a JPEG right here. So I can right click, open with, I'm opening mine in Photoshop. If you have another program, then you will need to open it in that program. And oh, I love when I have a very instructive error. I had this selected. What I need to select is the whole thing. So we're going to do that again. So what happened is I had only a piece of this selected when I brought it in, when I said export UVs. I need to be in object mode and have this entire thing selected. And that's what happens when we don't pay attention. And I'm just call it the same thing, apply and close, and be like, do you want to overwrite? Yes, because I don't want that file. Um, there it is. So I can check from here. I can see that everything's in there. I just figured there was a glare on my computer, and that's why I couldn't see the tiny little lines. All right, so from here on out, my instructions are Photoshop based. However, most of your programs out there can do the things that I am talking about. You just need to know which buttons to press. So when I say, unlock that layer, a lot of programs lock the layer on a JPEG initially. If I say go to image adjustments, invert, I'm inverting between black and white. I want black lines on a white background, not white lines on a black background. Every program has that ability. You just have to find it in your program. Another thing I will do is make a new layer. And I'm going to name the UV layer UVs. And then frame. Oops. All right. And so now this is the layer I'm going to paint on. I'm going to put the UV layer on top. I'm going to set its composite mode to multiply. That should be available somewhere on your program as well, because I don't want to paint over it. If I paint over this, if I just grab this real quick. There you go. I grab a brush. I just need to make the brush larger. If I paint like this, I don't know where I am. I don't know where the edges are. Like, what if I want to do something along the edges that, deals with the fact that there's seams there? I can't do anything. But if I drag this beneath the UVs and my UV layer is set to multiply, then I can see it. Now I'm going to lock my UV layer as well because I don't want to accidentally paint on that, right? I want to be yelled at if I try to paint on it. So I go here and I can start to paint. And I'm just going to, real quick get some brush strokes down for the back and the frame of this just so we can. Now you have to be careful. So you had seen I had some like areas that didn't quite hit each other. So I need to make sure this is fully covered. I need to make sure I'm not. Ooh, that's a weird brush. Stand by. There we go. I do need to make sure that I'm not impinging on this area. And I need to make sure I'm not missing little tiny areas. See that? That little corner? Hang on. Okay, good. That's there. We need to make sure we're getting that. Make sure we're getting this edge. There we go. Now I'm going to go to my browser real quick. So let's see here. So I've got a couple of images that I can pull from to, here we go, just for funsies. So we're going to save image as. You can attach textures from other places in part by grabbing images from elsewhere, open them up in the program of your choosing. In Photoshop, that means, grabbing your move tool, clicking here, dragging up to the tab and holding until this comes forward, and then dragging and releasing here. Oh, interesting. The image I pulled is not quite big enough. That's a shame. So as much as I want to use this image, it's not the size that I need it to be. Let's see if I can find a larger version. Ahaha, there we go. So apparently this is a wallpaper. Let's see here. Let's see if this is big enough. Save image as. Da, da, da. So I'm going to get rid of this. I don't want to stretch anything out. We can compress stuff. This new one's probably going to be much too big. So when I drag and drop this, okay, there we go. It's a little bit too big. I can then, there's a way to transform it in this program that's called Control T or Edit Transform. And I'm going to make sure, all right, I'm going to have to pick where I want which part of the image I want. So it's going to crop some of it. I have to choose which part of it's going to crop and how. I do that. I grab my marquee tool. Eesh. Well, actually, I can just go like this. Ah, there we go. That's easier. Rather than trying to edit that photo, I just put this information on the back, and now it won't be ugly wrapping around there. And that's the choice you have to make: is am I going to use this image, or am I going to find one that's the exact proportions, or am I going to crop this? Don't squash it, please. Don't sit there and go, oh, let me just well, hang on, you got to hold down Shift to do it, but don't be sitting there like, oh, I'm just going to squash this thing and bring it. You're ruining the image, right? You should leave it the aspect ratio it is, and then just deal with the fact that it has to be cropped. You don't want to, if you start squashing and stretching things, we're gonna see it, we're gonna notice. So this is like the bare minimum of what we want to do for this assignment. It's proving that I understand that this is the front of the picture frame, and then this is the actual picture frame. Now, something you could do, if you want to kind of go that next step, is I can grab this burn tool. I'm gonna go down here, and I could start to just kidding, my exposure's turned way down from a previous assignment. I'm also on the wrong layer. There we go. So I can start to consider adding in a little bit of smudge or detail or something. Again, I understand that what I'm looking at right here is the interior of the frame. So that, that being a little bit darker kind of makes sense. I actually have to turn this, I would have to turn this way down. Because I like my burn and dodge tools to be kind of lightly used, um, rather than being so heavy. And I can use Shift to make sure I go in straight lines. I'm doing this very quickly so you're not bored watching me. So that's one area that I could add a bit of more information to. Another one would be, if I wanted to add any scratches, that would be more of the dodge tool, which looks like I was already thinking of that. Do a better job than I'm doing here, right? But you choose the right brush and you could make stuff look scuffed up. All right, but let's presume that I've done a lot of drawing on and painting on here. I've not only put an image on here, I've done a lot of work with, adding some shadows. I can add in a little bit of shadowing here so that it's like the seam is as if there's like a deep route there. I can add scratches to the front and back. I can scuff up this painting a little bit and show that I understand that this is the back, this is the front, this is the inside, this is the outside. Show those kinds of things um, in my painting. But when I'm done, I say File, Save, and it's actually going to do a Save As because I started as a JPEG. I started as a flat object. And most programs are not going to just resave as a flat object because I now have multiple layers. So I have to tell it, all right, Photoshop is fine, but I need to have it not in my images folder. I need to have it in my source images folder. All right, so images is for stuff coming out of Maya. Source images is for stuff going into Maya. So I set that up, and I make sure to go back to the correct program. And I'm going to pull off my UV editor and close it, and pull off this editor and close it for now. There we go. And I'm going to right click, new material, and ask myself, do I want this to be shiny or not? Sure, shiny. I'm going to edit, delete by type history, get rid of all that UV history I was doing. Checker box, file, hit this folder, and it goes right to my source images folder. All right, so If this doesn't show up, press this 6 on your keyboard to get hardware textures. Um, but otherwise, this seems to be lining up quite well. Got the image on the front here. Got the brown for the frame all on the back. You can see all the scratch marks I very quickly put in there. You can also see um, we can see a spot that I missed. I'll have to go find that. That's one of the things we're checking for. Unless, oh no, that's just the light. Oh, interesting. Okay, so I didn't miss a spot. It's just the light is being very reflecty. But you'll notice that there's these lines. So what happens is in Photoshop, when we're done, we have to turn this visibility off. Don't delete the layer because you might need to go in there and fix some things up. But all we have to do is make that invisible, Control S to save, and then hit reload over here. The lines go away. And now I'm sitting here wondering, making really sure that I in fact, okay, yep, it's just very shiny. That's what the blend has done. So maybe I'll, nope. Okay, how about a Fong? It's still doing that weird thing. So I'd have to see about maybe altering the model slightly, to make sure that that didn't do that because I do kind of want it to be shiny, I think. And that's just no, the blend was better. I'm looking at this back here going, the blend was much better. Yeah, the default out of the box blend is just a nicer shade. But if you can imagine if I did nicer scratches and did nicer painting for that, how that would look. But this is essentially what we want to show, that we understand how to unwrap the UVs in at least a marginal okay way and be able to get all of the facets of this showing, and then in how we paint it in whatever program you choose to paint it in, that it's understanding, exactly where what these lines mean, how these lines line up with this 3D space. That's what we're trying to learn here. um, and that's what is so difficult. If I bring up my UV editor again, that 2D layout, how it relates to this.